Today, we'll be diving into the recently released February CPI inflation report, which revealed a 6.0% inflation rate, and discussing its implications on the economy. We'll not only go over the numbers, but also provide you with my opinions and critiques on each section. In January, the inflation rate was 6.4%, and it fell to 6.0% in February. This was in line with market expectations, so there were no major surprises, allowing the stock market to breathe a sigh of relief. However, month-over-month inflation rose by 0.4%, indicating that inflation is showing signs of revival. While the slight drop in inflation rate from January to February might seem like good news, the month-over-month increase is concerning. It suggests that we may still be far from resolving the inflation issue, and this will likely continue to have an impact on consumers and the overall economy. Here's a breakdown of the year-over-year stats for the major categories. 1. Food inflation, 9.5% 2. Energy prices, 5.2% 3. Services excluding housing, 7.3% 4. Shelter inflation, 8.1%. Let's discuss each of these categories in more detail. Food inflation. With a 9.5% inflation rate, the impact on consumers is severe, as expenses are rising faster than wages or income. Items such as milk, coffee, bread, butter, and eggs have seen significant increases in price. This puts a strain on households and further exacerbates income inequality. The high food inflation rate is unacceptable, as it significantly impacts the well-being of consumers. Energy prices. Energy prices have increased by 5.2% year-over-year, with electricity and utility gas service prices seeing the most significant increases. Though gasoline and diesel prices have remained flat month-over-month, they were much higher in February of 2022. The rising energy prices, particularly for electricity and utility gas services, place additional stress on households and businesses alike. Efforts to transition to renewable energy sources and improve energy efficiency could help in mitigating these increases in the long run. Services excluding housing have increased by 7.3%, primarily due to the overheating labor market and the supply-demand imbalance for workers. Employee shortages lead to higher wage inflation, further driving up the cost of services. While it's essential to address employee shortages and ensure fair wages, it's also crucial to strike a balance that doesn't cause the cost of services to skyrocket. This might involve investing in education and training programs to fill the gaps in the labor market. Shelter inflation has risen by 8.1%, reflecting the continued challenges in the housing market. This is partly due to the way shelter inflation is calculated, leading to a lag effect in both rising and falling prices. The current state of the housing market is concerning, and addressing the root causes of these inflationary pressures, such as supply constraints and affordability issues, should be a priority for policymakers. The general public expects inflation to fall sharply in the short run. However, long-term expectations remain elevated, indicating that people believe inflation will remain a persistent issue. It's essential for the Federal Reserve to consider these expectations when making monetary policy decisions. The fact that long-term inflation expectations remain elevated is a red flag. It may lead to a self-fulfilling prophecy, where people's actions based on these expectations further contribute to inflationary pressures. Regulators must work to restore confidence in their ability to control inflation. In the labor market, unemployment continues to decrease, reaching a low of 3.8%. However, labor force participation remains subdued, suggesting that some people have left the workforce altogether. While low unemployment is generally a positive sign, the decline in labor force participation is concerning. One of the key factors contributing to the low unemployment rate in the current economy is the increasing demand for individuals to take on multiple jobs to sustain themselves and their families. This phenomenon, known as multiple job holding or moonlighting, has been driven by various economic and social factors that warrant closer examination. Despite the economic growth and low unemployment rate, wage growth has not kept pace with the rising cost of living. The increase in living expenses, including housing, healthcare, education, and other basic necessities has outpaced the growth of wages, forcing many people to work multiple jobs to cover their expenses. This situation has led to an artificial reduction in unemployment numbers, as the same individuals are being counted as employed multiple times due to their various job commitments. The rise of the gig economy and non-traditional employment has also contributed to the demand for multiple job holding. Many jobs in the gig economy, such as rideshare drivers, food delivery couriers, and freelance workers, offer flexibility and independence, but often lack stability, benefits, and long-term growth prospects. As a result, people working in these sectors may need to take on additional jobs to ensure a steady income and secure their financial future. Growing income inequality is another factor that has fueled the need for multiple job holding. As the gap between the rich and the poor continues to widen, those in the lower and middle income brackets may struggle to make ends meet, resorting to multiple jobs to maintain their standard of living. This income disparity can lead to a vicious cycle where individuals are forced to work longer hours across multiple jobs, leaving less time for education, skill development, and other opportunities for upward mobility. The fact that the low unemployment rate is partially driven by multiple job holding raises questions about the true state of the labor market and the economy. A low unemployment rate is often seen as an indicator of a healthy economy, but when people are working multiple jobs to make ends meet, it suggests underlying economic problems. It is essential to consider the quality of jobs and the well-being of workers when assessing the labor market, rather than relying solely on the unemployment rate as an indicator of economic health. To combat the rise of multiple job holding and its negative consequences, regulators and employers must address the root causes. This can be achieved through initiatives such as raising the minimum wage, providing affordable housing and healthcare, investing in education and skill development, and promoting job security and stable employment opportunities. By addressing these underlying issues, the need for multiple job holding can be reduced, leading to a more accurate representation of the labor market and improving the overall well-being of workers and their families. In response to the current inflationary environment, the Federal Reserve has begun to raise interest rates, with multiple hikes expected throughout 2023. Additionally, they have signaled that they will begin tapering their bond purchases, which will reduce the amount of liquidity in the market. Although these measures might be necessary to combat inflation, they come with potential downsides. For instance, raising interest rates could dampen economic growth and impact the stock market negatively. Striking a balance between controlling inflation and promoting economic growth is a challenge that the Federal Reserve must carefully navigate. In order to combat the high inflation rate and address the economic challenges it poses, various solutions and policy recommendations can be considered. Here are some possible approaches to help stabilize the economy and improve conditions for businesses and consumers alike. 1. Tighter monetary policy. The Federal Reserve can adopt a tighter monetary policy by raising interest rates, which would make borrowing more expensive and potentially reduce consumer spending and business investment. This approach could help slow down inflation by discouraging excessive borrowing and spending. However, this strategy may also have negative consequences, such as slowing down economic growth and potentially leading to job losses. 2. Fiscal responsibility. The government should aim to maintain fiscal responsibility by avoiding excessive spending and reducing the budget deficit. This approach can help prevent an overheating economy, which could contribute to higher inflation rates. By reining in spending and focusing on essential projects, the government can help create a more stable economic environment. 3. Encouraging productivity growth. One way to mitigate the impact of inflation is by promoting productivity growth. By investing in education, research and development, and infrastructure, the government can help create an environment that fosters innovation and productivity. This, in turn, can lead to higher economic growth and increased prosperity, which can help offset the negative effects of inflation. 4. Inflation-indexed bonds. The government could issue more inflation-indexed bonds to help protect investors from the negative effects of inflation. These bonds would provide a return that is adjusted for inflation, ensuring that investors' purchasing power is preserved. This could help boost confidence in the economy and encourage investment, ultimately contributing to economic stability. In conclusion, addressing the high inflation rate is a complex task that requires a multifaceted approach.